One suggestion for that is ultimately that of greater spending power, and that in itself stems from the channels of revenue upon which clubs are dependent. Now, in the Premier League, we see significant levels of revenue stemming from the likes of broadcast deals and sponsorship, meaning that Premier League clubs, particularly at the high end of the table, are less dependent on revenues from match-going fans. And this is what sets the Premier League apart from the counterparts across Europe. Sponsorship and broadcast deals are less significant proportions of their revenue, and ticket sales themselves are more significant. And with COVID being implementing restrictions on match-going fans, those sources of revenues are drastically curtailed for clubs on the continent. Transfer spending is down by approximately half this summer compared to previous summer transfer windows. Yeah, so there is some slight subdued level of spending, but certainly compared to the likes of Germany and Spain, the levels of spending seen in the Premier League have largely been unobstructed by COVID, it seems.
The Premier League is still set to spend over £1 billion on transfers. And I think the critical thing that this report finds is that their actual transfer deficit, so money out on recruitment versus money in on player sales, is actually going to increase on this time last summer.
A lot of those leagues would spend money on players from the Premier League, for instance, and as such, the level of exports from the Premier League has been significantly more subdued than would ordinarily be the case. And that plays into a wider transfer deficit.
So for finishing bottom of the Premier League last season, Norwich City got £87 million in TV money. They're all absolutely terrified of falling into the Championship because you're really getting very, very small slice of TV money, predominantly actually coming from the parachute payments from being in the Premier League. So this level of spending is something of a self-perpetuating problem because every club is desperate to not fall out of the league, and with that TV money on offer, obviously their safest bet of staying in is to invest in the playing staff. All of these clubs, as we mentioned before, they've got three major sources of income. All three of those income sources in the Premier League will come under downward pressure. So the sponsorship fees behind every shirt sponsor is a real business. They have to make decisions about managing their own finances. Is it unruly to be spending large swathes of cash on shirt deals when you're making people redundant, for instance? The TV deals will come under more pressure given the wider economic uncertainty and people's appetite to spend on pay TV. But I think the gate receipts is the one that is going to be very, very difficult, even for the Premier League clubs, to bridge that gap.